Welcome back everybody to R44's YouTube channel. Today we are finally releasing a video that we've been wanting to do for ages. It's long overdue. We've been selling these wheels for a long time, but let's talk about it. So G80 M3, it also suits the new 240i and any kind of G series LED steering wheel setup. This is a full install guide, step by step on how to install your wheel, wire up the display and get it running. So you'll receive in your box a wheel, so this is a Shft wheel with carbon top and bottom, leather sides and M stitching, as well as a transporting OBD connection and like a transmitter. So yeah, let's get straight into it and show you guys how to do it. So first thing first, we'll run through all the tools later. So remove the negative terminal with the 10mm socket, loosen it up, pull it off, put it aside. Make sure that you either put a safety restraint, put something over this, and make sure that the trunk does not close. If it does close, you will not be able to get back into it. It's very difficult. So let's find Dylan now in the cockpit. All right, so we're now inside the car. The battery's off. Obviously, all the entertainment systems turned off. The main thing is if you did something wrong and the airbag wanted to explode, it won't explode. Flathead screwdriver. If you have a longer version, double the size of this, it's helpful so it doesn't get in the way of the paddles. But there's a guide hole on a stock wheel. We'll show you one in a moment. If you feel around, you'll feel along this area a little soft spot, and that's where you need to pierce it with your screwdriver. But this is an aftermarket wheel already, so it's got a hole in it. So we're going to just pop this out, and once we're in the fitting room, we will run through a stock wheel. So just want to push in. You want to push in and feel a spring. You can move the airbag around to try and feel the spring. It can take some moving around, and that pops it out. So that's now loose. So now we pop onto the other side. We just want to push up, pop them out. So that side's out. Now swap to a smaller screwdriver. You do want to get quite a big flathead screwdriver to do that. We're now inside here. Can you see all right, Dylan? Yeah? So now we want to pull off and disconnect the airbag. So you can release the airbag. And put that aside, put that on the passenger's seat. We now want to release this connection here. So I do that by just slightly lifting up. On the top side there is a groove, and if you lift the plastic up it will pop out. The last one is this mechanism here. So again, you just want to lift it up. This one's a lot harder to get hold of. Get in there, just pull it out. What I recommend, actually, I'll show you another technique, is you release that when you're pulling the steering wheel off, so you can use the tension on the cable to kind of pull it out of the socket. So now I'm going to grab my 16mm socket and remove the center screw. I'm using obviously quite a high-end, heavy-duty impact gun. For this, yeah, you just need a breaker bar or something. We'll look at torquing it back up after, but for now we'll just unscrew this. Let's remove that. So that's a 16mm socket. Remove that, put it down, and let's now remove the wheel. So the wheel's now removed, and let's go into the fitting bay and look at dismantling this wheel and changing it over. All right, so I'm going to show you shortly just how you pierce the original wheel. So it's a standard wheel. You can see just up here, so there's a kind of a crease here in the wheel. If you follow that up and you just feel a light spot, that's where you want to pinch through. You can see it pops out into this channel just there. So let me get my screwdriver. Comes through there. So now you'll push through there and you want to push the spring. Swap onto this wheel. This is the spring that you'll be pushing. This spring here, and you'll be releasing it from the airbag. So it's a bit of a hard thing, but you'll just feel for it, and you should be fine. So let's get on to stripping down the wheel. Obviously, these are the two wheels, and then we'll just change them over. So first thing first, let's have a look. We're going to release all the visible screws on the steering wheel. So I'm using a Torx T20 bit. On an electric driver, you can use this on a handheld ratchet as well. And you just want to, I'm going to release this screw. That screw there. Get in here. So this one I'm going to get smaller ratchets, that way you don't scratch the steering wheel. But what we'll do first, we'll do something easier. We'll get in here and we'll release the paddles. the Torx T20 bit down the bottom on both sides. There's normally a couple bits of wires. It's a little bit tight for access. Obviously our steering wheels, the wiring is going to be slightly different just because this wheel has been our main development wheel for the last 1.5 years. So we're always removing it, changing it over. But now we've released the 2 paddles. You can come around the back. See here, another Torx T20. Release that. Be very careful with these because these are machined into a brass insert, so you don't want to strip them. So now remove those. We can release them. Use my trim tool just to pull that screw out a little bit. Put that aside. Turn the wheel over. And now you want to pull this out. There's clips along the top and there's one little push down the bottom. So I clip the top out. If it's a bit tight, go in there with a screwdriver and just pull up on the clips. This bit at the bottom, you've got to be very careful. Just pull it out like that, and that'll pull it out. So 1 second, let's remove this. You can get it out, unclip it, and clip it. So there's a cables to look out for. So this first one here is to remove the disconnect the heating button. So just pull it out, and it will disable that. And then there's a canvas kind of cable here that goes into the switches that power all these switches. You can just pull that out there and pull this out. So now this is out, we can have a look. That was the plug that you just removed, which was just here. So now we're going to pull this aside. That stays as it should. There's nothing else to change around here. So now with the Torx T20, we can release these screws here that do operate the M1 and 2. So you can release that. Just release all these screws. What I'm going to try and do is release as much as the assembly as possible as one, to then drop it into the steering wheel. Remove the vibration. Put these screws aside. So you've also got your screws from your paddle shifters. You can pull these out. The paddle shifters you want to unplug. So you can just, with the blue plugs, pull them out, pull them through the steering wheel. The holes are a bit tight sometimes. Help guide them through. One paddle shifter. Paddle shifter. Like that. So this trim just pulls out from the top. You can see here there's some guides, some pins. That's for this cabling. So just remember, when you put it back together, we want to run that channel the cables need to go into. But that comes out. Your M1s and 2s, just make sure if you're going to keep your screws in there, be careful of them. You then use your trim tool, and you want to remove there's a plastic harness that goes all the way around. Let's tidy this up nicely. Trim tool, just here. Put that aside. So that's loose, and you can, if you want to remove that, just remove the ground, put it aside. Trim tool, you want to remove this ground connection here. Your trim tool, pop that up. So that's there like that. And then you can see here, there's these little pushes, like kind of studs that go into the rubber of the steering wheel. Get your trim tool underneath them, pull up, release everything. So that's now release everything. So you've got your wires going through this channel. Pull it out the channel either side. You can now pull this out. That wheel has now been dismantled. We'll now slide in the new Shft LED wheel. And simply just start placing this back in. Some steering wheels, depending on your spec, will have on the stock wheel, this is obviously a heated wheel, so you've got your heated element coming in here, as well as some wheels have a cable that goes in for the touch sensors for the adaptive cruise. You will lose all those functionalities with the carbon wheel because of the carbon assembly and the leather not having the heating and all the kind of the shaping can't accept the heating element. So you will lose all of that. You shouldn't have any warning lights, but you sometimes get warning lights for the adaptive cruise. So if you do receive that, that is the reason why, because you have removed a connection. But let's get back into this. So again, I'm just going to start wiggling. Keep this plastic for the steering wheel, put that aside for the moment. Push all that, the black trim piece back in. You can put your motor in. Let's put those 2 screws. All the screws in the steering wheel are Torx T20. We'll torque these up by hand. So that's there. So now you've got 3 connections here for the LED steering wheel. Positive and negative powers up the LED display. The blue is for additional connections, so if you want additional sensors, etc., that is what that's used for. For us here, we're not running any additional sensors, so all you need to do is connect the red to a positive terminal, the black to a ground, and that'll power up the steering wheel and do everything you need it to do. So we're going to get the black connection, put it underneath the ground that goes on the wheel. Face it pretty much the same place there. With your trim tool, just push down and seat that nice and strong. That'll push down on both grounds and make a nice strong connection. You can then use the channels to run the cabling neatly back up to here. So we'll leave that on the side for now. So we'll start reassembling this, put these connections back into the channels. You can put your paddle shifters back in. I'll just be connecting, just running the paddle shifters back and connect them so they're not loose. So up here. So that all goes there. We can now put these back in. You've got the channels there. We're going to put this trim first, because if you screw down before these buttons before this trim, you won't be able to slide it in. So M1s and M2. Start to slide all this in. Tuck all the trim in. The other side of your wheel. There you go. So it's starting to look like a steering wheel now. Just make sure this trim is pushed in nice and tight. You've got this going through the correct channels. We can now tuck that in there and put your M2 in. Make sure it's seated. Our one's a little bit worn out from all the removals. That's there. Make sure you don't pinch this cable as it comes through. I'll leave these loose to first make sure that any cables, you have enough slack on them. So this one just goes there like so. We'll get onto the M1. Make sure the cable's pushed into the channel down there. Otherwise it won't let the M1 sit properly. So go around, so that's all that's connected. So we're now looking at how we're going to wire the positive feed from the steering wheel. This is the positive here. We've obviously already installed an LED wheel about 8 months ago to this car. So this is where we connect the positive feed through this connection here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to heat up the soldering iron. I'm going to unwrap this and then we're going to show you how we connect them. I personally use solder rather than a crimp connection, but you're more than welcome to use a crimp connection. So I'm just going to unravel this. We'll look at connecting that up, get that wired in, and then finish up the assembly. All right, so we're now ready to solder it. So the positive connection, I've cut this off. I don't need it. I'm not using these connections. I've opened it up. I've tinted the connection with solder. I'd highly recommend, if you're trying to solder it, practice soldering. I've opened up this connection. Obviously, we've got a big opening because we've also run other sensors off this previously, but just open up a small connection to connect this in. I'm now with a nice and warm soldering iron. So just tint that up nicely. So a nice strong connection. So that's all connected in there now. So what I'm going to do now is seal that up, tuck it back, and then go on to reassembly. So I'll catch you guys back in a second. So that we've soldered that up, we've tucked it back, it's nice and out of the way. Put that connection back. That's pushed down as hard as it can be. So now you've wired up the LED display. You've got a positive and a negative connection. We're now going to put the airbag assembly back in. It's in there like that. Go in with your 220. Just lightly tighten these. They don't need to be over tightened. If you've had any issues with, when you install it, if you have any issues with the movement, just do a test here. Make sure you can push your airbag down as per normal. And just give it a little tighten. Make sure there's lots of movement. Don't forget to reconnect this ground cable here. Just goes in there. There you go. So that's all connected. So now we are going to tuck all of this cabling for the LED display into this section here. Again, you don't need the blue connection, so you can just tuck it all in, have a cable tie-in. You want to make sure it just stays out of the way of the airbag assembly, so you don't have any issues with the airbag. So now, steering wheel will plug in the heating, even though you won't have the heating element there, but at least it's connected. It's a nice, it's a snug connection because it's the only thing that keeps this the front connected. Push your buttons in either side. So you just want to give it a good push down, tuck it in. Should all seat really nice. This is the main thing with the Shft wheels compared to a lot of others that we did test, was just the overall fitment of all of this assembly, making sure it's all tucked in. If this is pushing out, just tuck it back in, tuck it into the wheel. So now let's connect the connection up to the buttons. So just tuck that connection in there, tucked in. So now let's turn it around and let's connect the two machine fixings. So the biggest difference is these are machined and they're brass connections. So you just want to thread them in very slowly. It is better to do it by hand if it's your first time. That's it. It'll torque them up. See now, paddles back in. So you now got to get in here. It's a bit snug in there. Paddle one, the next paddle in. All right, we're ready. So the wheel has now been assembled, looking good. Make sure you check your paddles, your M1s and M2s, making sure that they're fully connected and as they should be. So now we're just going to push the steering wheel in. There's a line on the steering wheel and there's a line on the column. Make sure they line up. You can put your cables in. This one's quite easy to put in just before you go in. So just take it back off, push that one in, push that in, and then you're going to reinstall your 16mm socket. So we torque these up to 70 Newton meters. My gun's set up for that, so we're just going to gun it in. So that's torqued up now. and ready to rock and roll. We recommend, obviously, if you've not got a calibrated gun that you can calibrate yourself, I'd recommend obviously using a torque gun. Airbag, straight in, clip it in, now push it, make sure it's got full movement. There you go. Wow, looks really good. Ready to gap, but more importantly, it's time to liven up the system. So we're now going to put the negative terminal back on the car. Push it down, let's tighten that up, and let's get into the... All right, so we're now in the footwell. We're filming on an iPhone because of the size of Dylan's camera, but I've added 3 lines of adhesive tape because we are going to wire this box along this footwell and above the kind of accelerator pedal, the brake pedal, sorry. So first connection is the OBD. Plug this in. If you can plug it in, there you go, wrong place. We're now, this trim here, so this trim, I'll show you along here. All right, so we're gonna follow this trim along here and tuck the cable in, and then we're gonna push the box up above here. So I'm just gonna do that now. This cable, the white cable, you don't need to worry about that cable, that's for an additional sensors as well. So just tuck everything up. The further you tuck it, you will surpass this trim, and it will, the space is a hollow space up there, so the trim will return to where it needs to go. This will allow you to pull out the OBD if you need to do diagnostics. So now I'm going to remove the 3M tape on the back, and then I'm going to tuck it just to the left of the accelerator pedal, the brake pedal, sorry, and then to the right if you're a US car or a left-hand drive. So let's remove this, 2 secs. So we're now going to put this up here. You just tuck it up and in, and then push it down. There is a lot of foam up there, so you just want to push the foam back, then stick your pad down and there. All right, so that, let me get that stuck down. All right, that's stuck down, lovely. Now let's pop out of here, and now let's power up the car. Yeah. All right, everybody, I hope you've enjoyed that. Obviously, it was very much of a how-to video, very detailed, as much detail as you can kind of show. But it's as simple as that. We've got a world record in the workshop, 25 minutes to install an LED wheel from start to finish, including getting your tools. So if you want to video your whole process in 25 minutes or less, let us know. But anyways, like, subscribe, hit that bell button. All the links to these wheels are below. Obviously, I've opted for the leather because I'll be wearing racing gloves, etc. But the Alcantara is definitely the most popular. But yeah, let's give it a little rev. That's the R44 titanium system, but with catless downpipes. But they're getting changed next week back to the sports cats. It's just way too loud. But anyways, like, subscribe, hit that bell button.